All right, guys, what is up? It's Jack, and welcome back to another video. And I'm doing this a little bit differently today. So I'm doing this while actually being on live stream. I've got 22 viewers. You probably can't see them in the recording of this video, but there's 22 viewers on now. And I decided to record for this commentary because, well, first of all, I want to say that I basically stand by of what I said in the previous video, but there were, of course, a few things that I didn't talk about, which I failed to mention. So I am going to be doing that in this video. So today's video is going to be about not only why XDefiant is dead, officially dead in 6 months, but also why that it is very, 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 very unlikely for it to get resurrected or to return. Now, first of all, what I had mentioned in my previous video, I stood by 100%. Like, in other words, the root of the problem was on Ubisoft, right? Bad management was something that was always a problem with this game since the launch and beyond, right? And what I mean by that is that if Ubisoft was more patient and decided to release the game when it was supposed to be released, which is supposed to be 6 months from now, the game would have been in a much better state with a lot more content, and it would have actually held a much higher player base over the upcoming months, because the fact that the game had content, it would be more polished, there would be more factions, more things to do, things to grind, and therefore those concurrent players that we had when the game was at its peak at 700,000 plus, a higher chunk of the player count would have stayed around. Okay, now we obviously don't know how many concurrent players would stick around 6 months later, right? Because nobody can predict that kind of thing. However, one thing we do know for sure is that because the game would have a ton of content, more players would have stuck around, therefore more sales from the store would have happened, etc., etc., etc. So I stand by that. And of course, I stand by the fact that the developers have done a tremendous job with the game. I think at this point, with this big update that we've had as of today, or as of the last 24, 36 hours or so as of the time of this recording, that it is a very, very, very amazing thing that we're getting the kind of content that we're getting now, because it just goes to show that not only were the devs cooking, but another thing is that they were literally listening to every source of feedback that we've been giving them, right? Every single complaint, every single request, and everything like that. Like, all of that was being addressed in the form of prestige, content, weapons, the netcode fix, party game modes, private matches, kill cams, which unfortunately did not make the cut, but I'm assuming they were pretty close. But that was something that was very much something that the fans wanted. And of course, your ranked play and all that kind of stuff. Like, everything we could have possibly wanted would have been at the launch of the game. Okay, so I definitely stand by that as well. So as I mentioned in the previous video, Ubisoft was at the forefront. And of course, I also stand by the fact that Ubisoft is bleeding money, which is probably a big reason as to why they rushed this game a year out. They wanted to make profits because they made too many boo-boos in the past and in the present, as to which they were hoping XDefiant could at least slow the bleeding or maybe get them out of this kind of predicament that they were in. But obviously, as we know now, and as we've known in history throughout time, if you rush games too often and have high expectations, etc., only bad things can come from it. You can't pull a Call of Duty without being Call of Duty. Without like, if XDefiant was around as long enough as Call of Duty was, and it was a similar situation with like the way Activision is doing things, and XDefiant had been around for decades or whatnot, like Call of Duty was, okay, maybe you can get away with that. But you simply can't get away with what Call of Duty is doing without being Call of Duty. Not to mention the fact that you don't have the kind of budget that Activision has now, especially now that they're backed with Microsoft, making them something from billions to trillions. Okay, now this is where the new intel comes in, and it's not really new, it's just common sense. And I don't see, now forgive me, but I haven't seen every single video that other content creators, both big and small, have made, but I'm gonna just put it out. It's all mathematical. Now, here is the issue. Now, as of recently, we've learned that 270 plus developers have been laid off from XDefiant, and right now we've only got like a skeleton crew left. So let's just say, for mathematics' sake, that we had about 300 developers working on XDefiant, okay? Now, that's 300 developers. Now, let's say their median average for every single one of those developers was $100,000 a year. That equals to $30 million a year to not only keep XDefiant going in terms of a development standpoint, but to keep things going forward. But that does not include things like the servers, and that does not include marketing. That's just the development of the game itself. $30 million. Now you add in things like the servers, right? And then you add in marketing, which we all know is very expensive. You're talking significantly more money. Now, in the beginning, XDefiant had the kind of player count to where, okay, you could definitely do something with the player count of 15 million unique users and 750,000 concurrent players that we had at one point, which lasted, I believe, a month. And then after that month, those numbers started to decline rapidly to the point to where people were saying that as of recently, reports, from the inside have been saying that basically we had either 10,000 people or less playing the game. And by the way, not every single one of those 10,000 people were spending money on the game. But let's just be positive here for a second. Let's just say that every single one of those 10,000 people that were playing the game were spending, let's say, and again, I'm being very optimistic when I say this, let's say they were spending $30 a month on cosmetics in this game. Let's say they were spending $10 on the battle pass and an additional 20 on the cosmetics that are in the store, okay? And this is very generous, this is very optimistic, okay? That's 30. Multiply that by, by 10,000, okay? So you've got what, 30,000? And then multiply that by 12 months. That total is still not enough to keep XDefiant going in order to keep things moving forward. Now, I've heard that the servers themselves, right? The servers themselves may or may not cost a lot in terms of just keeping the game going without any developer support, just to kind of have like a server maintenance thing going or whatnot, and to cost Ubisoft the least amount of money. So now this video was actually kind of inspired by my boss. Let me give you the rundown real quick. One of my bosses at one of my jobs basically said that the big thing that has been in discussion for this year is that the higher ups are noticing that a lot of the workers want an increase in pay. And he agrees with that. However, he can't just go up to his higher ups and report for us and say, hey, my employees want more pay. Let's give them more pay. He basically said, you guys need to give me something to work with. And what he meant by that is, I need proof that other companies are paying their employees more, so that way my company here, our company here, that my higher ups, want to remain competitive in, they basically want proof that other people with these similar jobs are paying more, so that way they can be more competitive and therefore give you that increase. Otherwise, if there's no reason, they're not going to give you an increase. You see what I'm saying? So we can't just be saying we want a raise and therefore expect to get a raise, okay? Now, I want you to take that philosophy and I want you to apply it to XDefiant. Now, bless the players, bless the player count, bless the entire community. You guys know I love you, and XDefiant is the reason for resurrecting my channel, etc., etc., etc. But let's be realistic here. No matter... And again, I don't want to be a negative Nancy. I'm just being realistic and mathematic on this, okay? And from a business standpoint, right? From a logical standpoint in that aspect. No matter how many people sign the petition, it is not going to make a difference. Maybe, and this is a big maybe, even if that petition were to have impressive numbers. And what I mean by impressive numbers is we need a number that's probably, I would probably say 30 to 50,000 at least, for some executive to take a look at that number and say, okay, the least amount of money that we would make is this much from this game. Would it be enough to keep the game servers up? If the answer is yes, then the game can keep going. But as I mentioned before, it costs $30 million a year just from the development standpoint alone to keep the game moving forward in terms of adding in more content, etc., etc. Okay, and again, that's not including servers, that's not including marketing. And as you guys know, when it comes to a game like Call of Duty, no matter how shit their game is, and no matter how long their games have been out there, right? They spend a ton of money on marketing because it works. Marketing works, and that's why they spend so much money on marketing. They probably spend more money on marketing than what they spend on little things in order to keep things running for the game, to be honest, and giving, updates and actually, if it's not going to make them money, they're not going to do it. It's simple as that. So when you look at it from a business standpoint, from guys like even Tencent, right, which are said to hopefully buy Ubisoft out, right, if that even happens on the terms that they're supposed to happen, right, they're going to be looking at it from the same way that my executives do, from my boss's executives do at the job. And they're going to be like, okay, how much is it going to cost to keep the game up, first and foremost? How many people are playing, and how much money was for the last month that the game was on before we decided to shut down? How much revenue was coming in? And if those numbers do not add up, they are not going to sacrifice any money on XDefiant. So what I'm trying to tell you is that, long story short, XDefiant was not making enough money, and simply put, no business would continue to, especially one that's bleeding money like Ubisoft, is not going to put more into a product that's actually bleeding them money. All they're going to be doing, if they do that from a business standpoint, is make them bleed out even faster. So therefore, they basically decided to cut their losses, because at the end of the day, if keeping XDefiant up was going to be a thing, it was going to cost them additional money. And of course, they decided to put all their bets on, future projects coming up, like Assassin's Creed Shadows, for instance. And they're basically going to be betting on that, especially since the fact that the game is going to be worth $70 when it launches. So if the game were to launch very well and perform very well, then therefore they are pretty much guaranteed 70 times however millions of copies that they're sold, which is pretty much a guaranteed bet, compared to a free-to-play shooter that is actually not guaranteed, because it all depends on the microtransactions. And it seems that not many people were spending that much money on microtransactions. Let's not mention that the store itself was also not, and this is where Ubisoft was at fault as well. There was no marketing be put into place, and the store was lacking, which is something that you guys brought to my attention as well, because you guys know how I am. I don't care about the store. I don't care about cosmetics. But at the end of the day, it is definitely, like, when you look at it from this standpoint that I just mentioned throughout the entire of this video, there is no way that any executive out there with the right business savvy is going to basically sacrifice literally millions of dollars just to keep a game up for the community. They want to either at least break even, and if they're breaking even, what they're going to do is they're just going to keep the servers up and no development support. But if they go positive, then they can invest in developers and kind of go from there. But at the end of the day, a business always wants to make money. There's no business out there that just wants to break even. Everybody, from the smallest business to the largest business, wants to go positive no matter what. And unfortunately, fortunately, in the very beginning, we had the kind of numbers to where XDefiant could make a profit. But Ubisoft fucked up from the very beginning, because they launched the game a year ahead of the time before it was supposed to launch, because they needed money badly, and they decided to rush the development. And here we are today. So the root of the problem is, yes, Ubisoft. And because of their fuck up, of course, people didn't spend money. Of course, people didn't stick around, because the game was obviously rushed, and you could see it in every single aspect. And on top of that, Ubisoft didn't really have that much faith and money, also because of the fact that there was hardly any marketing done, period. So the developers, the players and all that kind of stuff, the game itself, we're on the unfortunate circumstance of Ubisoft making that decision to rush the game out. And then everything else is purely financial. The game just wasn't making enough. So that is why XDefiant is not only going to be gone in 6 months, but it is also why it is going to stay gone. Again, it's we can pray for miracles, we can pray for something to happen, but ultimately, at the end of the day, even if we were to get a certain percentage of those players back, it's not going to be the numbers that we had previously. As a matter of fact, not even close. You can get a resurgence, but usually in the history of gaming, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 10 to 15% at most have come back from a game that has, kind of resurrected itself into something better. I have to look at the specifics on Rainbow Six Siege in terms of what the numbers were previously and what they are now. But not only that, it actually took time for them to get there. So again, this is a very, very, very highly unlikely circumstance that XDefiant will ever come back after it is gone, even if Tencent were to pick it up. Because again, it's all about money. And unfortunately, due to the circumstances that happened with the handling of Ubisoft, it just wasn't enough. And that is why XDefiant unfortunately, is that game that is going to be talked about throughout years that just never made it because of everything I just mentioned here. So with that being said, guys, again, not meaning to be a negative Nancy or anything. I'm just keeping it real how it is. So with that being said, let all of your comments be known down below. And thank you all for taking the time to watch and or listen. I hope you guys are enjoying XDefiant while we have it, because I know I am. And I'll catch you guys on the next video and or stream. See ya.